Attention duelists! Today we're gonna be checking out Senpapi's, my boy Senpapi's deck profile.
Yo.
And it's what kind of deck you have?
It's Cyberdragon with a little bit of spice that I decided to add into it. And you know, without further ado, I mean, if there's no other ways to kind of introduce this, here's the deck profile. I actually went 3-2 in Swiss, and somehow, some way, by the good grace of God, I got into top 8 and then managed to actually eke out 3rd place in the entire, like, you know, like, I don't think, was it best of 6, like, what, 16?
Yeah.
Like 16 plus or whatever, and at our locals, and I was actually really happy with how this build came out. Now, the build that I used to actually to really go into it is not the same one that I actually used to top. I tweaked it just a little bit because I picked up a couple of cards here and there, so that's kind of like, you know, how I'm like really looking at everything. And yeah, I'm just not gonna go into, you know, too much crazy detail. I'm just gonna show you exactly what it is. So standard right now is 3 Cyberdragons, of course. You clearly are going to run this all the time. This is your big boss monster. You know, this is you know, if you ever run this at 2, die. Why? You know, so that's pretty much it. Then you have your 3 core. Naturally, you want to run 3, of course, and then 3 Cyberdragon Hearse. This card is amazing. I mean, when this came out, Cyberdragon Horizon, I was extremely happy, and you know, a lot of people obviously like the Dante effect that it obviously gets, you know, because of course, you know, you get to, you know, you bring back a Cyberdragon monster, you know, from, like, you know, graveyard to hand, or you can search a Cyberdragon from deck to, you know, from deck to hand. But very seldomly does anyone actually use the first effect, which is when you special summon, you get to treat them as a level 5. And but then, of course, obviously, you get to only special summon machines at that point, which isn't necessarily that difficult. But he's a perfect target for one of the cards that I actually am teching in there, so he's really good with that. 1 Cyberdragon Veer. I've noticed in other deck profiles that, you know, people run 2. Some people just run none. I think that 1 is pretty much the, you know, just the right ratio for it, because when you see it, it's obviously very good. When you don't see it, I mean, you're not hurting either. He's also like good fodder for just like the other little cards that I obviously have put in there. The attack boost is very seldomly used, but I do use his ability to obviously chain block, so something like Ash Blossom or something like yeah, mostly Ash Blossom. If anybody wants to Ash my Cyberdragon core, I pretty much chain block and go into Cyberdragon Veer. So you have to kind of negate him in order for, you know, for that to happen. Then, of course, the 3 Galaxy Soldiers. So I don't have to necessarily say more about this particular card. You know, just run 3 of, and pretty much you have a bunch of light targets. You know, the deck, the entire of the deck is light, so you really don't have to worry too much about not getting him off. You can brick with him. I'm not gonna lie to you. There have been certain times when playtesting that I have bricked, so I have actually mulled over the decision of actually not of cutting him completely. However, because he's a level 5, because he's a machine, because he's a light, it's almost like, you know, just foolish of me for even, you know, to do that. So, you know, like, he's extremely good on that one. All right, and the 1-ofs. People somewhat give me flack for this, but I enjoy him. Electromagnetic Turtle. Turtle is just one of those things that's just God help you when he, you know, when he's there, and God help the opponent when he doesn't realize and doesn't check the graveyard that you obviously milled him for Rampage Dragon or Galaxy Soldier or whatever. Or however, you obviously got him to the graveyard, and then he does save you. He actually saved me against Rongo. I actually managed to, you know, take down a Rongo with at least 6 materials. That was extremely challenging, and he actually sealed the win for me when I finally got Rongo down to 2 material, and I could actually beat him off the board. And then, of course, Jizukiru. I play tested 2. I didn't like it at 2 for a certain, you know, for a certain amount of time. 1 is, of course, obviously the ratio most people really go by. Some people run 2. I've actually seen someone side deck 3, and very searchable. Very much, you know, like, it doesn't matter how you search him, he pretty much can come out. So you don't really have to go crazy into, like, you know, like the ratios. 1 obviously is, of course, being the better number right there. All right. Then the 1 card that I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't understand why people don't really run this more than, obviously, like, I run 1. Most people run none. Cyber L-Tenon. L-Tenon cracks so many boards, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, alright? I've cracked U-boards, I've cracked, Colossuses, Titans, a whole mess load of crap I have cracked. Rongo's a little bit different, but I don't fear that deck so much. Thunder Dragon's probably my worst matchup, to be very honest, so it gets a little weird, having to deal with that particular deck, because obviously, like I gotta search, I gotta do a whole bunch of other, jazz just to even get like that, just get all those monsters off. But Cyber L-Tenon obviously has the special thing of sending everything to graveyard. So anything that doesn't get targeted, like something like Cosmos, I mean, they're just going to be fucked at that point, because obviously they can't get targeted. However, they can be sent. I mean, you do still have to answer for their graveyard effects, of course, and then able to special summon themselves, and then that's kind of like a different battle right there. But a lot of them are machines, so of course, naturally for any Cyberdragon deck, you contact them and tell them to get fucked. Cyber L-Tenon is very searchable. He is not a brick. He's wonderful. He has saved me, and unless obviously maybe Cyberdragon Noxter, that one, the one that the OCG has, I'd probably cut L-Tenon for them. I'll probably side him and run 3 of those, and yeah, like I would actually run that as opposed to Cyber L-Tenon. That's when I would finally say, you know what, I give up on that card. And for the tech, I wanted to actually figure out exactly how to go first with this deck, and I figured out, I just didn't like the way that the deck was just primarily 95% to 98%. You have to go second or bust. So I needed to answer, like going first without having to expend that much resources. So I thought to myself, why not throw in the Mech Knight engine? 2 Purple Nightfall, 2 Indigo Eclipse, and 1 Mech Knight Blue Sky. If anything, I will say, like, at some point, these guys might get cut out for something different. I don't run that many hand traps, to be very honest with you. With the way that the meta is obviously changing, there's just going to be, I have to be fluid and adapt to certain, to certain play styles and to certain people, especially to certain decks. Once again, I tell you, Thunder Dragon and Thunder Dragon Dino, or Mix Match of both of them, or the both of them are actually my worst matchups. Everybody else, like Sky Striker, Altergeist, Rongo, Goki, I don't fear them. Like, seriously, like they're fuck them. But the former decks, obviously, yeah, they're very oppressive, and they do actually, they kind of whip my ass a little bit. So I had to answer for that. The Mech Knights do really help with that. So I really, I just, figured that out on my own. I've seen Mech Knight Cyberdragon decks, and I've seen people obviously run this particular engine with Alistair, with Invocation, with Macabre and Raijin, but and then just only add 3 Cyberdragon, and then they say, oh yeah, Mech Knight Cyberdragon. It's like, no, for me, it's gonna be Cyberdragon with Mech Knights, or I would, or as affectionately I would call them, Cyber Knights. So this is what I use right there, and of course, you're not gonna let a lot of this obviously go off. You've got to answer these. You have to do so, because you're just not gonna let me. You're not gonna let me get that much advantage just for free, and then think that's gonna be okay. All right. And for the hand traps, something I'm obviously, going to experiment with. 3 Gammas, and of course the Cyphering Driver. Of course, you're going to be wondering exactly what am I doing with these, but I've noticed that I obviously lose out to a lot of like Ash Blossom bullshit, or Ghost Ogre, probably Ghost Reaper, and Winter Cherries. Things of that sort. Hand traps are annoying as hell, so obviously I have to answer for them. And of course, anything to obviously thin my deck out just even a little bit, especially when it comes to getting this guy out, or even recurring him from either hand or the graveyard, obviously is going to work in my favor. And they're also light targets, so of course, naturally, they have synergy with Galaxy Soldier, so that's always a plus. And that's it for the monster count. I believe it is 25 for monsters. And now onto the spells. Machine Duplication at 2. People are going to scratch their head and ask me, why the hell do I run this at 3? Because of the fact that I run a different type of support and a different type of search engine, a la, the Mech Knights, and of course, running through Galaxy Soldier, things of that, and, and of course, I find my ways to obviously mill with Chimera Tech. I felt that 2 Machine Duplication obviously works perfectly for me. 3 I play tested before, and I tend to brick with them a little bit. So 2 for me obviously is a better ratio right there. And same goes with 2 Cyber Emergencies. Now I've definitely seen, you know, especially like competitive, regional, and national, like, you know, Cyberdragon decks run 3 Cyber Emergencies. I obviously don't disagree with them, but for my particular playstyle, I run 2. Because when I see it, it's great. When I don't see it, it's, you know, and obviously I hurt a little bit inside. However, you know, more often than not, I get this off, regardless of whether it's at 1, 2, or 3. I found out that the third copy, you know, to try to get a third copy is $20-something, and no, I'm not doing that fucking shit. I got these at a fucking steal when people were still like trying to figure out exactly how useful they were going to be. So I obviously decided to just run them, you know, at 2 apiece. And same goes for 2 Cyber Repair Plan. Cyber Repair Plan, I've tried to tweak it a little bit and try to see if I could do 1, but then I realized I obviously, no, I didn't care for it. I actually appreciate the fact that it's at 2, and you know, it's obviously paid dividends for me. It's actually won me a couple of duels, honestly, when I've had it at 2 instead of 1, or at none for some reason. Some people actually decide to do that. I don't know why. And then the 1 Cyber Rev system, new edition. I actually was running no Cyber Rev systems until I actually picked this up, and I said, you know what, let me actually give this a try. I know a lot of people obviously they go gaga for it. They love it. I obviously adore it too. And I felt like I finally was able to make enough space in the deck to actually put that there. So, you know, obviously I was going to run the 1 of. I see people do 2 or 3. 1's a proper ratio, especially when it comes to, just like I said, once again, how I actually play. So that's pretty much it. Then the 1 Cyber Low Fusion and 1 Overload Fusion. Don't necessarily need to like go into deep exposition on that one. They obviously come out with Chimera Tech, and they obviously, you know, they win me games, and they actually, you know, kind of screw over my opponents sometimes. And you know, opponents obviously do see it. They do recognize that, you know, they're going to be in my deck. So there's a lot of familiarity. So a lot of people really do know exactly how the play is. Limited removal is another one. I was at odds about having it at 2, but then I realized it just didn't have the space for it, because I also have these 3 extenders right here. I have Soul Charge, 1 for 1, and Monster Reborn. Soul Charge, eventually I might just cut this out, because when I like, if I have to do Soul Charge, I obviously have to just establish, you know, Griffin and Infinities and Summon Sorceress. I have to do a whole bunch of mess for then all of a sudden something to happen, and it's just like, wait a minute, you know, like I just spent how many life points just doing all this nothing to not attack, to not obviously, you know, like enter, like, you know, just basically OTK you. And the 2 traps, since I don't have impermanences, because, you know, I don't ball out of town like that, I run 2 Cybernetic Overflows. I have no real reason or understanding as to why Konami decided to make this a common card, because this, at the very least, should have been a super rare, or, you know, hopefully maybe within the next couple of months, this gets a reprint in, you know, one of the tournament packs, or, you know, the OTS packs. Because this card's fucking ridiculous. You know, you pop it, you obviously, you know, you get a Cyber Spell or Trap, you know, and then you use it, you know, you banish your Cyber Dragons from anywhere, you know, hand, field, or graveyard, and non-targeting effect, it obviously goes to the graveyard, and yeah, kind of outs a lot of problematic monsters. So yeah, that's kind of it. 40 cards in the main deck. I did try 45 at one point and didn't like it. Wasn't really a big fan of it. I saw the stuff that I needed, but no, 40 is obviously where I wanted to go. Eventually, I'll probably tweak it out depending on playtesting and, you know, the level of opponents that I have to face. Now on to the extra deck. Omega, clearly because I have you know, Gamma and Cypher and Driver. I realized that obviously I do banish a lot, and I do, you know, like may need a resource here or there. So Omega obviously is a great fit, and, you know, thankfully enough, he is only at 1. You can only have him at 1, so obviously when you do see him, and he also frees up space for my rank 8 play, or my only rank 8 play, Hope Harbinger, you know, Dragon Titanic Galaxy. Everybody knows what he does. I make him via Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon or the Mech Knights, and I obviously love him for it. He outs Sky Strikers, he outs a bunch of problematic spell cards, and when I see, and he's obviously a big body on the board, when I see him, I appreciate him. Which brings me next to Oh man, I'm eating potatoes here. I love him. 2 Chimera Mega Fleets, 1 Fortress, 2 Rampage. If I could run Chimera Tech at 3, I would. But 2 is obviously, like the proper ratio. I could take out Titanic Galaxy, but I need a disruption and also a big body on board. And I see Chimera Tech every single game. It doesn't matter. It is just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just what it is. Chimera Tech Rampage. Need I see more? He obviously OTKs. He can attack 3 times. So once I use the effect. Fortress Dragon. When I see him, obviously I'm in love, and especially with people with machines. Against the mirror match, it's basically it's just contact wars. So that usually tends to be the gameplay there. Which why I also have Pleiades. And 2 Nova, 2 Infinity. I did play 1 Infinity, and to be very honest, that was probably a very boneheaded thing of me to do, because I needed the second Infinity to actually out a couple of boards, and my stupid mistake to obviously not run 2 actually, I potentially think that actually cost me winning the entire thing, actually, because I had a Thunder Dragon player that obviously could have definitely gotten a second Infinity right in the fucking face, and unfortunately I didn't have it. And Seeger, amazing. Summon Sorceress, wonderful. And Cleafort, genius. Up in the air about this card because of the fact that I added a Nightmare Griffin early on, and then I realized I like Griffin, but just making him is just annoying as shit, whereas Cleafort Genius is really just fast, easy, and he's a skill drain basically for anything on the board, so it doesn't necessarily relegate just to monster effects. He has a solid body on the board. However, I usually will just use him to link climb up to Summon Sorceress and basically kind of go from there. And yeah, that's all the monsters in the extra deck. And let's go to our side deck. Now, the side deck, obviously, of course, to kind of quote, to kind of paraphrase, is all personal preference at this particular point. And to quote someone else, of course, games are definitely won and lost through the side deck. And number 1 will be the Winged Dragon Raw Sphere Mode. Sphere Mode is great for those Thunder Dragon boards. You'll see the theme here that I absolutely hate Thunder Dragons. They're a great archetype, but they're just doing their thing, honestly. I really do appreciate them, but they're fucking expensive, honestly. Goddamn Colossus, $40, $50 cards, really? Red Reboot. People were telling me about running this at 2, sometimes even at 3, but it's like, no, I can activate this from my hand, pay half my life points, screw with your trap lineup for a little bit, and then probably overflow you, or, hit you with probably something to obviously pop back row, and, obviously just kind of go from there. I like it at 1 just because of that particular reason right there, okay? I see no reason to obviously load up a bunch of shit, in my deck for something that's going to basically net you some type of advantage later on. I kind of like to think 2-3 turns ahead, so that kind of happens. And one card that obviously a lot of people definitely didn't count on, especially for the mirror match, because I definitely see a lot of people running Cyberdragon, especially at locals or anything of that sort. And I'm probably going to take it to the regionals eventually one day, hopefully, if by the good grace of God, system down. If nobody remembers this card, you pay 1,000 life points. Banish all face-up machine-type monsters your opponent controls and in their graveyard. This actually, it almost won me a game against the mirror match. However, whereas I kind of ran the spicy tech in my deck, my opponent actually decided to run his own little spicy tech, and it was pretty much, kind of like who really wanted it more and who drew just a little bit better. But System Down obviously is great, it stops all that Cyberdragon, Cosmos shenanigans. Yeah, although with Cosmos they can actually recur their resources from Cosmotown, but at obviously a little price, they got to pay some life points to that. And of course, at some particular point, I hope to obviously get them down to some particular state where they don't have to be doing that, and they just pretty much kind of have to scoop up and say, yeah, that's a wrap right there. Two twin twisters. Don't necessarily have to go into long-winded explanation on that one. 2 Called by the Grave. It would have been nice to see 3, but I might just cut this down to 1, if not maybe 0, with the way that the meta obviously is shaping up to be, with hand traps not being as prevalent. So we'll see what happens. It's pretty much going to be all like, you know, close to the chest. That's how I'm going to play it. But for now, I'm obviously going to be running 2 artifact Lancia as well. Lancia obviously is a hand trap. I have no plans to obviously set him into the field. But if I do have to have him on the field for whatever reason, he obviously has the effect, of course, of banishing himself, tribute himself, obviously, to make sure that nobody gets to banish for the rest of the turn. So obviously, you do it during your opponent's turn, and Thunder Dragons can get fucked. That's pretty much it. Yeah, it's kind of how I want to run this deck. You know, fuck Thunder Dragons. I bring on the world, and that's pretty much how it is. Which brings me to my next, Lost Wind. Lost Wind has been making a return, and I obviously feel like it's going to obviously win you some games, and it actually won me a couple of games too, alongside Triple Dimensional Barrier. God, of course, if I'm facing off against Goki, if I'm facing off against Trickstars, or anything that clearly is going to use the link mechanic, that's essentially what's going to happen. These 6 are obviously going to be exceptionally useless. And, you know, with the exception of Lost Wind, but nevertheless, Dimensional Barrier becomes utterly useless. Lost Wind becomes a little utterly useless against, like, a deck like Cosmos, or anything that obviously, you know, just, it's not gonna fuck with all that targeting bullshit. But, yeah, you know, this is kind of like, you know, what I have so far, and, I managed to obviously, you know, top at my locals, you know, after not being, in a tournament for how long, so... Yeah, I mean, if there are any questions at all, especially when it comes to like some of the choices that I've made, especially in the deck profile, leave your comments obviously in the description below. And honestly, for you know.
All right, guys, and that was Senpapi's deck profile. And remember, guys, the last life point, the last prize card doesn't matter. Never give up, never surrender, and catch you guys next time.